Thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. Subscribe and check out the bell icon down there. Make sure you're getting notifications. And as always, like, comment, and share. I have no doubt that what I'm going to share with you today is going to be incredibly controversial. And I'm probably going to invoke some hate. But you know what? At this point, I don't care. If you don't like me with my beanie off, you can... Okay, that's not what I'm going to be talking about. But let's deal with the subject at hand. Years ago, many years ago, our forefathers brought forth upon this continent. Okay, that's Abraham Lincoln. And you'll see why I made that reference here in a minute. Many years ago, our forefathers, those brave and bold men who decided to defy tyranny, the tyranny of King George and the English Parliament and the English Empire, instituted a republic under the Constitution of the United States, and said in varied ways and in different forms and in different shapes that this nation could ultimately only be ruled by and survive as a republic by moral people. And I've talked about that before in different videos. I've talked about the moral decline of this great republic, and people kind of laugh at that, and they say, well, it depends on how you define morality, TC. It depends on how you argue with what a source for morality is. It depends on how you argue whether morality is subjective or objective. If it's subjective, then who determines it? If it's objective, what is that? What is the objective source? And I've already said that, but what we have is a growing propensity to platform and advance into our culture here in this republic debauchery and depravity and hatred. And ultimately, hatred is a part of the moral decline. The country had problems in its founding. Chattel slavery was legal. It was authorized. We had to fight many years in this country to get rid of it. We fought a bloody, not so civil war. We spent years after that still treating the black folk in the United States very poorly. The civil rights movement came along, and there were great strides made in seeing people come together, and I'll continue to argue, as I have before, that was only possible in this country the way it was because of the Constitution, because of the Bill of Rights. Other countries, sure, Great Britain saw a fight against chattel slavery in the English Empire long before the United States fought for it. But that there again also was sparked not by any latent Marxism or socialism or communism. It wasn't sparked by social justice, the cult of social justice. There was no social justice as we know it now. It was sparked by a Christian pursuit for what is just, and men like William Wilberforce brought upon the British Empire abolition, and that spread to the United States. But the way that we have seen people here in the United States be able to come together into a community of diversity as individualists is because our Constitution provides for individualism, provides for those things. The end of chattel slavery was going to happen in the United States, whether it ever happened in Great Britain. Indisputable. The United States was going to see the end of chattel slavery at some point. And so, for all of our faults, There was a time when the United States was able to self-govern. The people were able to be a government of the people, for the people, by the people, self-governing, because they were a moral people. But all of that has changed. We have removed objective sources for morality. We have removed morality, really, from the American landscape, because now we allow people to define what is good and what is moral based on their personal subjective feelings, predominantly based on their emotionalism. And so if somebody chooses to do something, it's moral because of their choice. And because of postmodernism and deconstructionism, and the fact that postmodernism and deconstructionism have eliminated the argument for truth by saying there is no truth, which is a truth statement by itself, we don't get to tell people that what they're doing is immoral because it violates our sense of morality, even though we, especially as Christians, can point to something and say, this is an objective standard for what is good and what is moral. This is an objective standard for how you are to define right and wrong. So what we're going to do is we're going to watch a video that is a demonstration that our nation as a whole has sunk into moral turpitude. We have lost the ability to self-govern because we have determined we can do whatever we want and broadcast it wherever we want, whenever we want. And this isn't an issue of free speech. This isn't an issue of free expression. This is an issue of the moral decline that will be the end of this great republic if we do not recognize the illness for what it is and begin to fight back against it. So shall we? Now, many of you have probably already seen this, and I'm sorry if you already know the story, but I'm talking about this not just from just the wickedness of what we're seeing here, but we need to understand what happened. This is a Juneteenth celebration. Juneteenth Independence Day, as it's officially now on the record as a federal holiday, being called Independence Day. Now we have 2 Independence Days, and I guarantee you it will not be long before the 4th of July and Independence Day celebration will be removed from the landscape as a white supremacist holiday in favor of the Juneteenth Independence Day federal holiday. But this takes place at a Juneteenth celebration, a celebration that resulted in gunfire, where one young man was gunned down in cold blood, and several others, including a man in his 60s and one a child, were also gunned down. And this is the response to first responders, not law enforcement, but EMTs, paramedics showing up. This is the response. They stood in the way. And then when they finally were able to get the ambulance in, this is how they lived out their truth. And I use that. This is how they lived out their truth. This is their truth. Let me know when you've had enough. Tell me this isn't an indication of how morally bankrupt our nation has become. What's the point of this? They're dancing all over emergency vehicles. For what reason? To what end? Why? And this isn't just dancing. This is the sexualization of tragedy. This is how we celebrate the new holiday. the thing that gets me is that this video is going to get me labeled all sorts of things. This video will get me labeled a white supremacist. It's going to get me labeled a racist. It's going to get me labeled a hater. It's going to get me labeled a bigot because of what I'm saying. And I want you to note that this is not about the ethnicity of the individuals involved. This is about the debauchery and the moral decline that is taking place, because this could have just as easily happened in a predominantly white community, because we've seen that. What is Antifa? Antifa is a predominantly white movement. It's a white terrorist movement, mind you. But look at what they do. Look at every single Antifa riot. There's no such thing as an Antifa protest. Look at every single Antifa riot that takes place. It's predominantly white folk destroying things and acting an ass, because we've lost the ability to self-govern, because we have lost our ability to define what is moral and what is immoral. We have lost our ability to define what is right and what is wrong. And we have turned in this country to a place where we will call those things that we once considered evil good, and those things which we once considered good evil. This has nothing to do with ethnicity. This is literally just an example of people celebrating through the objectification and the sexualization. And there again, let that sink in, okay? The extreme left, not even the extreme left, but the just slightly left of center and more left, have defined for us that we're not allowed to declare anything moral or immoral. Those things are just what they are. And at the same time, get mad at people for objectifying women and making them objects of sexual conquest. But that they laud this, where we see men sexually objectifying women and the women enjoying being sexually objectified, and not in a strip club, not in a private gathering, on the streets of our republic. This should break your heart, America. If you see this and this doesn't break your heart, you're part of the problem. And if you see this and instead of being angry at the people who are acting like this, you get angry at me, you're part of the problem. If you have a daughter, would you want her out there doing that against an ambulance? If you have a daughter doing that out there in public against an ambulance, would you want a man standing behind her, grinding on her like they're in bed? Would you want your daughter up there displaying herself and shaking her derriere on top of an ambulance and on top of other emergency vehicles? Would you want your kids blocking emergency vehicles from responding to a cold-blooded shooting that took the life of one young man? Celebrating that? If you don't think this is the end of Rome, you're freaking crazy. Our esteemed co-presidents fiddle while Rome burns, and they've got everybody else dancing in the streets while they allow Rome to burn. And they started the fire. They started the fire. This has got to end, because if it doesn't end and end soon, we're in a lot of trouble. This has got to stop. We've got to get this under control. If you think that this is okay, what we just watched, if you think this isn't indicative of a republic on the decline, falling into being ripe for a complete tyrannical overtaking, you're crazy. This kind of behavior screams for tyranny of any kind. I don't care if it's a oligarchical tyranny or a theological tyranny of some sort. It could be an Islamic state. It could be a heavy-handed, supposedly Christian theological tyranny. It could be a political tyranny by a particular political persuasion, which more than likely is going to be in a far left crackdown on anything that we determine is not good for the public good. We're ripe for tyranny. We're welcoming it in with this kind of behavior. And if you aren't willing to call out this kind of behavior, I don't care what your ethnicity is. I don't care. I don't care if you share the ethnicity of the actors in this video and you're not willing to call it out, you're part of the problem. You should be embarrassed by this. We should all be embarrassed by this. This is not the way a self-governing, moral republic behaves. If this keeps up, we deserve to lose it. Moral decline is destroying our republic. And if you don't recognize that, I feel incredibly sad for you. Until next time, resist this kind of garbage, and sic semper tyrannis.